Hello and welcome back. Guys, I am so happy that however you found my last video, 218 people have watched my video or at least clicked on it and checked it out for a few minutes. I certainly do appreciate that. This is a lot of fun for me and it helps me to keep me busy from doing other things, just playing video games, which I do quite a bit. Um, Today, I had the thought, and I don't see a lot of videos like this. Um, the very first time I ever built a computer was helping build my computer for some classes I was taking at college, and I had purchased it from a local computer store in 1999. All right, that might tell you a little bit about how old I am, but this is my very first ever custom built computer. Now I had Commodores and I had used TSR 80s when I was a kid in younger school. But the very first computer I ever paid money for to get for myself, I was able to visit and hang out with the guys at the computer store and help them, or they helped me learn how to do some of the things they did to put my computer system together. Now, it wasn't anything to brag about. It was an old white box with a white front and their custom logo sticker stuck to the front of it. And I have no idea what kind of parts were in it. I couldn't tell you the specs to save my life, but I remembered I had that computer for a long time and I loved it. So over the years, and that was, like I said, that was many, many years ago, but I grew a certain amount of fondness for just tinkering and putting things together and taking them apart. Even when I was a kid, I did this quite a bit. You can ask any of my family. My sister knows. She knows I'd take things apart. Couldn't always put them back together. And there was a time when computer building was a mystery to me and putting things together that I didn't understand. And that was before YouTube. And YouTube came out with a lot of people doing a lot of things and showing you how to do things. If you put it in YouTube, say, I want to know exactly how to do this, you can learn to do things you never thought you could do before. So over the years, and just by trial and error and practice, I learned how to do some of the things that are related to putting computers together. I'm no expert. I don't claim to be, and follow my advice at your own risk. But do your research, do your documentation, follow up with the information of people that know what they're doing, how they're doing it, and then make sure that you do it accordingly. And trial and error, you'll figure it out too. The thing that I would like to express to you, though, is it's not a mystery. It's not that hard to build a computer. And it's no different than trying anything for the first time. You could make mistakes, and it's okay. There are a few things that are detrimental to a new computer build, and there are a few things that you can fudge a little bit on and get away with and redo a couple times. Today, my point is after I bought the parts the other day and the video that I made of a bunch of cheap parts and some things that I was really awesome with, I thought were awesome. I found out that the motherboard was probably bad in that system. And so that was a key element of the thing that wouldn't allow me to put that back together and build it. Well, today I have scrapped one of my oldest computers that I have had in a long time. And for a little context on this, I've got one machine that is the oldest, and this is what I'm working with today. I thought it might be the same chipset, which is basically what the CPU out of the computer that I got the other day was, and I could use the motherboard out of my older system to complement that CPU. Well, it's actually not as new as the CPU that I pulled out of the parts computer the other day. So the computer that I have had, and I will show you, is here's the motherboard. Now I've already stripped the older one down completely, and if I can do this without making too much noise or bouncing around too much, I'll show you. Here's what's left of the case, and honestly, I don't even know what kind of case it was. I don't think it was a what I call cookie cutter out of a manufacturer, because I don't remember exactly who made it. But I do know that one of the things that I liked about it was, I'm going to get a camera set up soon because I keep looking over here to edit myself. But here's the motherboard for this. And this is a bear with me. I want to give you some context. This is a Acer RS780M03 motherboard. Uh, Circa about 2006, 7, or 8, give or take that year. And the socket is AM2. Okay. The parts that I pulled out the other day were AM3, which you'd be like, Robert, what's AM2 and AM3 mean? Well, in a nutshell, computer companies want to build something brand new every year. And they're that way they can sell you something different and upgrade it new, but that's also a way to keep it organized and allow you to be able to say this is a group of things that work well together. The next series will be another group of things that work well together as well. um, just like now we're on, that is the newest format for a CPU. It's basically how the CPU fits in the socket. It's the socket on the board, and it's the CPU that fits in it. And for AMD, that's a reference to AM2, AM3, AM4, and AM5. Right now, my primary computer is an AM4 computer, and the AM5 stuff's starting to roll out, but it's super, super expensive. And that bugs me. I want, like anybody else does, I want the latest, greatest new things. I want to drive the newest car. I want the fanciest, coolest tech. But you can't always do that. You can't always afford that kind of thing. So, what I would encourage you to do, if you're even interested this tiniest little bit in trying to put yourself together a computer, not only will you save a lot of money from having to build something that um, or pay for something somebody else has built and jack the price up. And you'll save the money, you'll learn a few things, and you'll take the personal pride and accomplishment of doing it yourself. And you may not put it together right the first time, it may fail. And that's okay, because the cool thing about computers is you can take them apart, put them back together, take them apart again, and put them back together. It's just like a puzzle, and it's a lot easier than a lot of puzzles, to be honest with you. For me, it is. And I think if you try it a little bit, and here's the example of what I'm thinking. This board is what, 2008? Gosh, that's 16 years old, give or take, more, maybe even more than that. Well, I'm not going to lose any sleep if I break something or something fails on this board and it doesn't come together at the end to be a fully functional working computer. I know for a fact that this motherboard works because before I took it down today, when I removed it all from the computer case, and it worked. I have used it before. Now, the reason that I have such an old computer is the one thing on here that most or all the new computers don't have is this little socket right here. This is just a 24-pin connector, and that connector specifically works for what I call an IED cable. An IED is just a fancy ribbon data cable. I believe it's 24 pins, if I'm not mistaken. It may be 23 because there's one slot in there that doesn't work. But for the longest time, I would have friends or family, and they say, hey, I've got this old computer. It doesn't work anymore, but I've got a lot of pictures on the hard drive, and I need to be able to recover those pictures. And so I was very invested in being able to do that for people. And so I needed one system that had the ability to connect to those drives and read those drives and be able to pull that data information off of them as well. This by no means is a very fast computer as far as speed at today's terms. It's got, you see, 4 RAM chips. And for new guys, RAM chip is just a thing that helps a computer do multiple things at the same time, allowing the whole system to be a little faster. Of course, the CPU, we consider it the brain. It does all the computations and work and whatnot. And the RAM just helps it organize the things that the CPU is doing. There's a much more technical term to that. I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but that's my understanding. Like you said, anything you don't understand, do your research. The one cool thing about this board is it's a modular component motherboard. And by modular component to me is it's not a proprietary computer board or motherboard that only allows for you to use the things that come with it. For instance, Dell. I love Dell computers. I like Lenovo. I've used a Mac or once or twice, a Macintosh, iMac, and well, I've used a Macintosh as well. All the and compact back in the day, all those computers have the same thing in common. Compact doesn't want you to take something that Dell makes for their computers and put it over into their computer and reap the benefits of having multiple brands of things together in the same computer. They want you to buy their products and they want you to buy their systems. And Dell has all their own varieties of everything you could possibly imagine to build any computer that you want. That's awesome. Dells are great computers worldwide. People use them all the time. I don't condone or um, I don't reject the idea of buying something completely built if that's what you want. The only difference, and the main reason that I would encourage you to try to build your own thing, is you can find cheaper parts, more available, you have more variety and more options, and you can also build something that you can upgrade slowly but surely over a period of time. One example of that is in a lot of systems, and even the name brand systems now, as older as this card was from the parts that we pulled out the other day, it is limited to what it's capable of doing. Now, this by no means could touch anything a brand new card could do. I think I have a 5700 XT in my personal computer that I use to game, and most people refer to graphics cards in the sense of frames per second. This will do 5 frames per second to my 200 frames per second. That's just an example. This will probably do a little better. I believe that this card will probably do um, 60 frames per second, no problem, at 1080, which is resolution, and the higher the resolution, the better picture. But for the most part, this graphics card will do things that the other one can do circles around. So the point to the video today is find you some super cheap old computer parts. Take it all apart and put it back together so you can teach yourself how to use the tools that you need and the process of putting these things together and taking them apart. And then so that way, when you go to upgrade, you can build as fast and as advanced and as expensive a computer as you want. And that's a process. But go like this probably was not more than in fact, I think I got this whole computer for free, or I paid a very small amount of money for it at the time in a bulk of an auction or real estate or estate sale. Pardon me. Um, I don't remember paying anything for it at all. So if I break this or if something fails on it, and I've built this thing a couple of times before, so I have nothing to lose on this. Go to your local thrift store, go to a garage sale, make somebody a cheap offer on Facebook Marketplace, find you some old computer components, find out what they are. Basically, you can Google the serial number. That's how I found out this one was an older one than I was working with before, and realize what works well together. Now, the only thing I know, with this being an AM2 socket in this board, the CPU that I pulled out of the other one is an AM3. It's not compatible with this socket. But knowing that, and also this is DDR2 RAM versus DDR3 that's in the other system. Now, what I do think and hope is all possible is that the slot that this works for, if you'll notice, is the same size as this graphics card. So even though the boards are different, the graphics cards are somewhat cross-compatible. That fits in there just right. And so I'm hoping to take my little bit older board, put in some of the things that I pulled out of the other computer, which there again, it was cheap parts I got off the marketplace. And this was cheap parts that I got somewhere, I don't even remember when, and see what I can do to make something that works. And for your entertainment and enjoyment, that's what we're here tonight to do. So, I don't think I forgot anything. Let me kind of run it down. Basically, out of the shell, this computer case here, I've taken absolutely everything out of. And one of the things I like about that is, if you'll notice here, I've got case screws, I've got motherboard screws, which are a little different. You don't have to terribly worry. As long as the screw will fit in the hole, and screw down and get firm. You don't really have to worry about what's different. The only thing about a motherboard screw is they're slightly more rounded. I don't know if my camera's capable of focusing in on that. They're slightly more rounded and smooth at the top, so they don't stick up and obstruct anything. And on a case screw, they're most typically hexagonal, and they're Phillips, and they're a little bit bigger. And I like to pull all the screws out of the old systems before I discarded the old pieces, so that I have extra components. Now, there's also another thing I pulled out of this case, and these are these little brass connectors here, and these are called risers. Basically, this screws into the case into multiple little places right here, and it's already threaded, but that is what the motherboard rests on. Well, I don't have quite the angle to be able to do that for you here, but basically that screws in there, snugs up, and then the motherboard will just set in the case on top of those risers and will screw right into the risers. Obviously, you don't want the back of your motherboard touching the metal because it would short out. So the risers stick it up off the case and only allow certain points of the motherboard to touch the case, which are these surrounded here. Basically, this is a ground, and this is okay to be grounded to the case for common ground and static control and whatnot. So any chance I get to take an old computer apart, I try to keep some of the smallest things, the cables. You never have enough SATA cables, which is basically what connects your hard drives and your components and your USB and those kind of things. These will all come in handy at some point as you're starting to build. If you're interested in building your own system, then on my description, I have a couple of links to PC Part Picker and Tom's Hardware. I'm not endorsed or sponsored by them, but I'm very fond of their sites, especially PC Part Picker. Tom's Hardware is a huge resource of information about individual components, comparisons of the market, what to look forward to next. So much information there. But PC Part Picker has the ability for you to pick out of a list of all the parts, and it shows you what you're compatible with one another. And 95% of the time, it's 100% accurate. Basically, if you say, I think the most important thing for you to look at considering your computer is what you're willing to spend the most money on. And basically, the first thing I think I would look at would be a motherboard. You can build a lot of things to a motherboard, but motherboard, if you buy an AM2 motherboard, it requires AM2 components. Once you put your AM2 motherboard, which you can't do that now because they're obsolete, but once you put, let's say, like an AM4 board or AM5, which is the newest market, if you go into PC Part Picker and you put an AM5 board in your list, it will only let you select from other things that are compatible with that board. So when you say, and it's got a list of motherboard, CPU, RAM, et cetera, et cetera. So you pick your motherboard and you select it, it puts it in the slot. And then the next thing you go look at is your CPU. Well, it'll only show you the CPUs that'll fit in that motherboard. And there are thousands of CPUs, but for instance, of a AM5 board, there may be only 20 or 30 AM5 CPUs that are out now, which more are coming. But basically, it'll only let you build a system with the components of compatibility, and it'll tell you if you pick something that's not compatible, which is kind of hard to do because it eliminates a lot of those options. PC Part Picker also has multiple user builds with details of information of every single part they've used and the things that they've done to put that together, and it makes it really interesting. Oh, look, here's a system, this is what I built it out of, and here's how much it cost me. And you can go and look at that whole price shopping list. Basically, it's a shopping list to see what they've done to create that system. So check out those web links at your convenience and kind of play with those a little bit. You'll get a good idea of how to put the components of what you'll need together to build a computer. But as I said before, if you've never built a computer and you're even the slightest bit interested in doing it, keep in mind it's not as hard as you think it is. Most motherboards are laid out the same way. There's a lot of videos on how to. I'm not going to go into every single little detail, but I would like to share some tips and tricks that I use to help me figure it out to make it easier for me. I think the hardest thing for me is when I'm putting the computer together is this little pad right here. And you'll notice, let's see if I can, this little pad of mine, this is basically where the on and off switch plugs in from the front of your case. It's also the reset button and the lights that flash on the front that let you know your computer's on or off, or if it's reading the hard drive. So there's all those, and there's only 2 pins per switch, but they go to the front of your computer. And that whole scenario looks a little, now these are just standard USB plugins, and they plug in all together at once. But when it comes to switches, and did I have that set aside? This particular computer that I had a card reader, and it also had USB, and it had the power switch here, which doesn't look like it now. But all those switches and plugs and buttons and stuff, they have all these little bitty tiny buttons and or connectors. And so you might get overwhelmed. It's like, oh, Robert, I put everything in my computer, I can't get it to work. Well, right here, this is probably the most important one because this is the on and off button. And there's only one place that it works, but there's on this pad that I showed you. If you'll notice, there's 2 pins that are painted red behind them. Sorry about the focus. This is a good camera, but I don't have it set up quite. Those 2 red pins, that plug-in plugs right into those 2 pins. If you got that first plug-in right, you could get the system to power up if everything else is right. So like I said, don't be intimidated by all these little plugs and switches and all these little things. For instance, in a nutshell, where this one is the front lights and the power switch, these other 3 are all the same. They're USB ports. So you plug in your USB cords that give you the USBs on the outside of your case. If you don't have any USBs on the outside of your case, you don't need to plug them in. Or if you don't want to use them, you don't have to plug them in. Okay. The next thing here, this red one over here, there's only one plug that looks like. Pardon me, it's dusty in here. Where did I do with that? Did I have it? It's oh no, that's a USB. Oh, here it is, right here. Nope, that's another USB. Well, the one over here is the audio, and that is, I think I separated that. Oh yeah, no, that's it. That's it. Trying to, I don't have a very good way of showing my toy. Okay, here's that thing. It looks just like a USB plug, but you see it says audio on it. Well, come on now, real close. Where's it? I know I got autofocus. Hello, autofocus. Okay, that says audio on it. You can trust me. But that one plugs in to that, and there's 8 little pins and 8 little holes in the plug, and one of the plugs is missing a pin, so you can't put it on wrong. It's just that easy. That's it. So basically, when your motherboard's in your computer and that cord's running through there and hanging down loose, you just pull it through and stick it in there. You can't get it wrong. And on the other ones that are USBs that aren't the same, they don't have a hole that will work in the audio. So you can't plug it into the audio because the hole's not in the right place. On this one, the missing hole is down here on the bottom. You see, I don't know if you can see it, but there's one little spot on there that's filled in. Well, same likewise. There's only one pin missing on the USB plugs, And if you line up the rest of them, it will go in there, but it won't plug into the wrong plug. Basically, right there is a USB plug for the front of the computer and the audio. There's Firewire. That's Firewire. It's still a USB form plug, but here's earphones and microphone. And those are plugged in. And the other one, which is the audio, which is this one we put over here in the red. And then the USB is one of these over here. If you got those two and then the power one, that's all the things you got to worry about plugging in that could possibly you could even think would go in the wrong plug. So it's really kind of, it's hard to mess it up if you just pay attention to what you're doing. Most of the plugs are written on. They tell you what they are. And just take your time and then send me a message and ask me questions if you need to. Or go find it on YouTube. There's more questions there. I apologize about the look of this case. It's hard to tell that this is what used to be the top of this. But I got a little enthusiastic about taking it apart and coming up with all the extra parts. But now, let me preface this. If you did happen to buy all new parts and you got the cheapest parts you can find, and even though they're brand new, and you feel like you'd have some difficulty putting them together, just take your time or get somebody that knows how to help you the first time. But the one thing I will say, one sense of urgency. There's one piece of a computer that's absolutely critical to getting it right, and you can easily mess it up. But let me take a little bit of that fear away. Pardon me just a second. I'm going to grab a little sip of water, stay hydrated. Let's talk about the CPU and how sensitive and delicate it is. Because it is the brain, and it has lots of connections that have to be made at the same time. I can't remember exactly how many, but for all the billions of transistors that are inside a CPU, they have got to have a leg, which is called a pin, a CPU pin, to go into the board to spread out to all these other components so that you know. See if I can get this without. So that you know that the information transfers beyond all these things and back and forth to your system. When you buy a brand new unit, and here again, it's why I encourage you to use some older things first and play with those. Play with them. That's how I learned. Play with them. I like to use that term. But when you buy a brand new system and you're going to go to build your system for the first time, your CPU will be in a little plastic box just like that, along with a shell or clamshell on it. And when you go to pull that out, all those little pins are exposed. They are tiny, tiny little pins on that CPU, and they are just copper. They're very lightweight, very flexible copper that can be bent. If you bend one out of all those plugins, you could possibly hinder your system from working properly. Therefore, if you'll notice, on this CPU, of all this stuff, there's one little corner down here that's got gold paint on it. Now, this is the AMD setup. AMD has male pins on the CPU. Intel chips don't have any pins on the CPU, but it does have pins on the motherboard. That's the difference. So different companies, different styles. But as far as AMD, that one little gold corner tells you that that's where there's a couple of pins that aren't supposed to be there are missing. And that's okay, because likewise, on your socket, you have a corner that doesn't have any holes in it. So in theory, you should not be able, now I say theory, you should not be able to put that CPU in the socket wrong. Pardon me. You can. You can totally have it put in the absolute wrong way and bend multiple pins. So that is the most critically sensitive part of the computer process of building. So when you go to look at that, find your gold corner, know where your slot is on the corner, and even on this one, even on this one, okay, I stand corrected. So let's look at this one more time because I don't want to be misleading. I apologize. We've got a corner, a corner, a corner. There's pins missing on each corner. But in only one corner is it missing one additional pin. And I'm sorry if you can see that. There it is. One additional pin. And that is the one corner where your little gold triangle is also missing that corner pin. So here's how I do it. I very lightly hold on to the CPU and ever so gently just lay it down on top of that socket, hoping to get those lined up. And if you're just careful, don't push down on it. Absolutely don't push it. If it does not lay in the socket, did you see that? It just literally laid down. I didn't push on it at all. It fell into the socket. Now, this little arm right here will put tension on every single one of those pins when you lay it down. But for the time, while it's up, there should be no tension on that at all. So here I can just very gently pick it up. So on here on the board, you've got one missing pin on that CPU socket. You got one missing pin on this one, and that little gold arrow lets you know that that's the corner that's missing a pin. That's where it should go in. It's the only way it should go in. But let's say you set it down just like this. Okay. If you notice, it's very crooked, but I also was very careful about setting it down, and that's perfectly okay. Just don't push it. Okay. Slightly, ever so slightly, pick it up, move it a little bit, and it's just kind of like you see the magicians laying down on the bed of nails. They will all support themselves as long as they have equal pressure and they don't uh, get any extra pressure on any of the pins that aren't getting it at the same time. So here, once you get it lined up just right, see how it fell in there? It just kind of fell in and it rested. So now the only other part to this is you apply just a little bit of, I'm just resting my finger on the CPU. Just resting. Now I got a big finger and it's kind of heavy, but I'm not putting any pressure down on the CPU. But when I'm doing that, it's to hold it in place as I slowly lower the bar down, and it'll start to grab underneath it and grab. And then when I get the bar all the way to the bottom, I don't know if you can see this, but it slides out just a little bit under this tab and it rests under that tab. Now, as I touch this, I can feel that it's solid. I put a little pressure on it just to feel it. It can't go anywhere, but that has locked it into place and it is not going anywhere. Now, if I hadn't got that right and I got to flipping that around and it popped right out, well, it wouldn't hurt my feelings because I've got $5 invested in the whole thing. So uh, here I can just double check. My little arms underneath there. Perfect. Now, as far as orientation, I believe, and don't hold me to this, but I believe that where the RAM sticks are, the AMD logo, if the RAM sticks are on top, you should be able to read the words on almost all the AMD chips. And so that's almost how you know, okay, that's how it goes in the socket, left to right, red underneath the RAM sticks. Double check the user manual if you're building something new. Um, the best part about buying something old and used is you can have something that's already put together and you take it apart. Okay, so that's probably the most sensitive part of building any computer. Once you've got that, the rest is easy peasy, lemon squeezy. It's super simple. It's nothing to it. But oh, Robert, there's always a but. How do you got to bring up a but now? Well, there's these things. RAM sticks. All right. So here's another word of caution. Not so much as RAM sticks. Let me show you this. Ram sticks, for the most part, are PCB wafer boards with IC chips on them. Okay, and they have a long copper edge on them, and for the most part, they are pretty tough. Like, Robert, what's the concern with RAM sticks? Well, let's talk about that. If you're building a new system for the first time and you don't have 4 sticks, for instance, these are 2 gigabytes each for a total of 8 gigabytes. Well, here you see the stickers on one side and it's not on the other. And there is an orientation of where the slot is in these RAM sticks. Okay, they're all the same. I take that back. They may not be exactly the same, but they appear to be. These appear to be. No, I'm mistaken. So they are. Okay, appears. Okay, so here's 2 different sets. These may be one particular group, and these may be a different group, but they're all the same kind of RAM. So this is crucial, and I know they're 2 gigabytes apiece, and they're all DDR2. I know that they're compatible with this board. They came out of it, but also if I were looking at that on PC Picker, why are you looking at my face? Can we get it all in here? Let's get it all in here. So the only error to caution as far as RAM are if you have the very best practice is to use all the exact same RAM from the same kit or from the same brand and the same speed. I won't go into the details about data as far as speed, but if one of these was a 4 gigabyte stick and another one was a 2 gigabyte stick, there could be some compatibility issues and they would cause issues in the build. Now, that's not the worst case scenario. That's not the thing that I would concern you about the most. Basically, I know these are all 2 gigabytes and they all do match. They work well together. But if you're building a computer and you've not done it for the first time, the habit you may see yourself having is you'll put the RAM in there and there it'll be, and the little tab will come over and you're like, okay, cool, good. Well, unfortunately, RAM takes just a little bit of elbow grease, okay? And in the sense of, oh gosh, everything's falling apart. Where's my gapper crew? I need some. All right. This RAM stick right here will not work. Your computer will not turn on. It'll beep at you. It may not have any lights at all. But right now, this RAM stick is not seated in its tray and locked down as it should be. You see, I just locked that tab. It's still not locked because it's missing the tray altogether. See how loose that is? A lot of the videos you see online and a lot of fix-it or repair videos, you'll see that this is a very common problem with a lot of brand new builds is that the RAM is not seated properly. And just like the CPU in the system, it has a lot of individual contacts. There's a lot going on there. And those have to be all in contact with the receiving pads that are inside these trays for it to talk like it should. And as you notice, I dropped these a little earlier, so they're a little tougher. Don't be afraid to properly seat your RAM. Unless you're just completely off, you're not going to do any damage. But keep in mind that this slot right here, if I can show you that slot, is your guide for how to put them in. And that typically, most RAM, that slot will miss altogether the space and it will not go in where it needs to go in because it's out of line. It's like a puzzle piece that won't fit because the slot's in the wrong place. So there is a proper orientation for how the RAM should go. Okay. So keep in mind that if it doesn't look right and that line doesn't match up, then you've got to flip it around. But that slot will only go this little gap right here, or pardon me, the little bridge right here will not allow the RAM to go in if it's backwards. That being said, also, once it is in the right spot, you've got to get that slot over the bridge, and it's got to be set to the certain point. You could apply pressure on that stick strong enough for that arm to come over by itself. Now see, the one side went, but the other side's not. Now I'm going to apply just as much pressure until that snaps into place. And I'm going to go ahead and assist it a little bit. But right now, when the ram has went far enough down to pull that switch back into itself, it's seated properly. Now, you have to do that 4 times. I've got 2 of these that have the crucial sticker on them. And if by any chance these are 2 separate brands, I'm going to use them in the same color corresponding trays. Now, because there's 4 and we fill all gaps, I would like to use the same name on the same slots. Or if you get a new system, you may only have 2 sticks of RAM. But you may also notice in some motherboards, it's yellow, blue, or red, black, or gray, red, or it's gray, red. And so if you have 1 or more sticks of RAM, there is a designated space for them to go in. There again, user manual will tell you where they go or where they don't. But sometimes it's in the outer slot, sometimes it's in the closer slot. If you have trouble getting your system to boot up, you may have 1 stick, that's all you got with your computer build, and it may be in the wrong slot because it reads them in a particular order. All there is to it. It's not hard, it's not complicated, but if you think you've got everything else right, you can pull your RAM out as often as you want, and you can throw it in another slot anytime. Just be careful not to miss. Let it lock in there, let it lock into place, reboot your system and go from there. Also, another tip is make sure that you always disconnect your power from your computer via the cord or the plug-in and let your computer set for 10 or 15 seconds. Let it discharge before you pull components in or out. And it's very good. Like right here, I have this mat and there's absolutely no metal in it whatsoever. So I'm not concerned about static. So that's the thing for this. Discharge your system, remove your part, put it back in and reset it. Plug your cord back in, turn the switch on, and then go from there. So here we go. Let's just go ahead and put these back in. I'm putting quite a bit of pressure on these to get them to snap back in, which is perfectly okay. And here, if I can't see those tracks, I could be over there and I could get them out of order. And you can push them down in the wrong spot. But see that right there? That's not even in the tray. That's just sitting in between 2 trays. So little things like that might bar you up a little bit from getting your system to work. So just make sure that you're in the track, your pins lock in. And they're seated, and then you can make sure that they're there. That's your RAM. Now we've got the 2 hardest parts of a computer build done. The CPU and the RAM. Once those are set in place, that is the most important things to focus on, because you can plug anything else in wrong and something not work and unplug it, replug it, and unplug it, and replug it, and unplug it, and replug it. Just doesn't matter. But the RAM and the CPU have to be perfect every time. So once you get that, you're in really good shape. There again, let me reemphasize, don't be afraid to try this on your own. It just takes a little bit of practice, a little bit of watching the video, pause the video, rewind the video, or back on the video, watch it again. And don't just use my video. I mean, this is not an instructional video. This is just some recommendations that I have to help you build your system. And I really, my intentions are to get you to try to do something that you might not normally do. But especially if you're a young man or a young woman who loves computers, but you want to start getting familiar with what's going on inside and you want to have a system that you built yourself, don't be afraid to try. Don't be afraid to try. There's a lot of old computer parts out there to practice on before you get into something a little more expensive that you've invested a lot of money in to do on your own. So, wow, we've been talking for 43 minutes. I'm not sure how long I want this video to be, but I'm just obviously very winded as far as trying to get a lot of information over to you. It's fun for me, and that's why I like to share with you what we've got going on here. I was going to put this together on video, but I really don't want this to run up over an hour. People will be gone, and they'll be like, "Oh, I can't have time for that. I don't want to watch. I don't want you to sit here and watch me talk for over an hour about every little thing." The things we've talked about tonight, though, are super important. Don't be afraid take patience with your CPU. Even even when you go to put your cooler on, and you have thermal paste needs to be applied to your CPU. And even when you put your cooler on, it's nowhere near as difficult. Basically, there's two hooks right here on this particular model. Those hook over, and then this little arm flips down and it locks it in place and it doesn't move. And then because it does have an electric fan on it, you just have to plug the fan in. Easy peasy. But there has to be the proper amount of thermal paste on here. You see there's a little bit of residue. It's not very thick. It doesn't have to be puddles. Um, for in this case, because I pulled this off and I've cleaned this up thoroughly, I would apply a little more thermal paste on this and mostly in the center and just a couple, 3 drops. Watch a couple of videos on the application of thermal paste to get the right amount. That won't be in this video for me tonight because it's a little ways out, but um, there'll be more. I would love to make more videos. I love for you guys to watch these videos and learn something new. Uh, all the views that have been on my other video, I didn't think I would ever get that many views on any video. Some of my older videos were just for fun, and I've never even thought about them before. But this is something that I'm very passionate and excited about, and I wanted to share with you. And it's something that's relevant. I love all the people that are on YouTube right now, and they talk about um, this technology. This is what this does, and this is what you need. I don't even understand it all. But I do understand that if you're a person that has a passion that wants to get into computing, wants to build your own computer, do it. Don't be afraid. And don't worry about what's the latest thing or the hottest thing. This computer right here is like 16, 17 years old. I'm going to put it back together, and I'm even going to use the cheap case that we got the other day out of the cheap parts because I can't wait for that LCD screen on the front to light up. I was able to get it lighted up for a couple minutes the other day, so I know it works. But until I get something else that I want to build into that case, I'm going to go ahead and use this, upgrade this system with that case, and eliminate this whole case that I was missing the panels on and using it as a test bench. And I can still use this as a test bench. So, and I've got all these parts, and I'm really excited. I want to see about if this will work. And just like I showed you there on that other one, this is still the same setup. It's still the same plug-in, and it will plug into this motherboard. Now, no, I mean, it actually even clears everything else that's in here. I'm not going to go ahead and apply it, but I can use this graphics card on this motherboard if it's compatible. The motherboard may require some BIOS updates and may or may not read this card. That is something that PC Part Picker will help you figure that out as well. And there are some, basically, Robert, what's a BIOS? Well, a BIOS is like what this motherboard already knows. So basically, there's a little battery on here, and this helps it remember what a little chip here, or I don't know if it's this chip or if it's underneath here, has a memory of, oh, here's a small program that tells the brand new CPU what all's going on in the motherboard before it ever gets turned on. And that's called a BIOS. And the BIOS is just a basic set of instructions that tell anything that gets plugged into this board how to work with it, how to communicate with it. If you put a much newer part on a much older board, it may not always see it or communicate with it. So sometimes you have to give the BIOS some new information or an update, and those new informations will talk to the thing that it's compatible with. There are some limitations of how far advanced you can go. Obviously, this board doesn't have an M.2 slot. Wouldn't know what to do with it, but you do have a PCI port, and you can put M.2 slots in a PCI port and put an M.2. But if the BIOS doesn't have the capability or the support or the programming or the information was never updated by the manufacturer, it wouldn't see it. It wouldn't recognize it, wouldn't know what to do with it. So those are things that you have to consider. My encouragement with using older parts is if you go wrong, you haven't lost anything, you haven't broke anything. It's not going to hurt if you break something or it does, if I drop this on the floor, I'm not going to lose any sleep. But as far as brand new components, it's if you bought everything today, most of that stuff would be compatible and it would work out great. Um, I'm thinking, because I'm not a YouTube streamer and I'm going to post this video for everybody to watch at their convenience. I would love to make shorter, more applicable videos to anything specific that you have questions about. If you don't know something and I don't know, I'll go find out and I will demonstrate, or to the best of my ability, anything I can do to help you in your process of doing uh, on your journey to learn more about computers and putting them together and building them. It's not for everybody, but for the people that are seeing this video, have some interest in them. And I also love old cars and hot rods, but I know a little more about computers than I do motors. So um, it's been a lot of fun. But I'm here for you. If you need anything, comment. Please do a like as well. Um, I'm not trying to become a streamer. I'm not trying to monetize YouTube to make any money. This is just for fun and entertainment. And I spend way too much time playing video games, so I'd rather be doing something that's productive and makes me feel good about being able to share with you something I know, to increase an understanding of some things that we can all learn about. I will make a series of videos about individual things because I didn't realize that even this would take an hour. Just before I even got to getting anywhere close to a case. Um, I'll be happy to show the processes, or whatever you like. You be my guide. Ask me, give me information. Let me know what you'd like to know, and I'll do my best to find out any information I can about what you'd like to know. And I'd be happy to demonstrate anything I'm capable of doing. So keep an eye on marketplaces and Craigslist, and don't be afraid to buy something used sometimes, but don't overinvest in things that are used. Know what you're buying, know what the price is, compare the price. One thing about PC Part Picker, it'll give you a listing. If you go and select, like, even I believe even these really old graphics cards would show up there if they're still for sale somewhere, but it'll tell you where they're sold and how much they are at each individual places. I know that there's uh, Newegg, and there's Amazon and Walmart, and I think B&M. Is it B&M? Though all those places are very popular with computer components and Micro Center, a lot of the times, if they have it for sale, PC Part Picker will show you everywhere it's for sale and the best price for it. You can pick where you'd like to consider buying it from. And once you've and you don't have to buy anything on PC Part Picker. It's not that thing. It just shows you different places and what they have it for sale for. Once you have all your items in that list, it'll show you how much it's going to cost you to buy all that stuff if you were to buy it from those vendors that they have available to you on the list. You can also print your list out. You can have it as a reference sheet to future. You can change it at any time. You can add, take away, and pretty much go for any price point you want, as long as you can get all the components you need to build the system. So thank you for watching this video. It's been 53 minutes. I don't know what I'm doing here, but I'll be back. I'll be back tomorrow. Make some more videos, and subscribe to the channel. And like I said, hit me up with any questions you have. I'll be happy to provide any information that I can find. Between me, you, and Google, we should probably be able to do just about anything. So I really want to do some more, but I don't want this to be a long, drawn out video. But I may keep this. I think what I'll do for the next video, I'm going to prep the case, and by prepping it, I'm going to take it apart, clean it out real good, make sure there's no cobwebs or dust, check the cables, make sure everything is there. And then my next video may be about 15 or 20 minutes long, but we'll do just one video on installing the motherboard into the case. Or perhaps the first video will be the power supply into the case. We did have a really nice power supply back here that came with that other case. I'll go ahead and show you how I would mount it up, what I would do with the cables, and then usually in the case, the power supply is the first thing, or the motherboard. There's no rhyme or reason to what's right or wrong. You can do it in any order you want. There are a few things that make it a little bit easier, but in the gist of it, the next few things we'll have to do is put the fan on the computer, on the CPU, put the motherboard in the case, put the power supply in the case, and then we have a certain amount of cable management and deciding if what drive we want to use. Which I think one of these has Windows 7 on them, which I still enjoy Windows 7. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm not sure what the other one has on it, but I do have some other drives. But for this being an older system, I'm not sure I'll put it on Windows 10 yet. I would prefer XP. I spent a lot of time with XP back in the day, and so I maybe do that. At the end of the day, this should still be a bench test system because it is so old. It wouldn't necessarily be for games, but I am excited to get the graphics cards in, see if they'll communicate, and if I can do some bench testing and say, hey, this is cute, what it'll do compared to what my system will do. And I'll give you a tour of my system at some point if that's something you're interested in. I'm very thankful to my son Robert, who at the time we went to Micro Center down in Texas. We're in Oklahoma, and we spent a lot of money getting very excited, filling up a shopping cart with a couple of builds of computer things. And we came home and pretty much built our very first high-end computer gaming systems, which we still use and upgrade to this day. And that's been a couple, 3 years ago. So lots of things to explore. Welcome to my adventure. Please come along with me. Let's have some fun. And please, hey, share your information about what you've built, your stories. And hey, we could even do if I could ever figure it out, we could do a collage. If you have a system or you have some information, we can get on to FaceTime. I'll find some way to incorporate the video, and we can do a split screen, and we can share information with others and do some live streaming. The opportunities are unlimited. So cool. Thank you again. I will look forward to making the next video, and for any amount of time that you spent watching this video, I appreciate you. It's nice to be able to share something. It makes me feel like I'm giving back something I love to do, and other people too. So with that, good night. Thank you so much, and good night, because it could be day where you're at. Good day, good night, good day. It could be any day. It could be afternoon. It could be morning. Wherever it is, whatever time it is, be blessed. Thank you for watching. Have a great time.